Hey everyone, welcome to a New Year's Eve version of this stream. I have a real mic now. That's one of the differences, and hopefully the audio quality won't suck this time. But I'm glad those of you who made it out can make it out. And Roy, I'm sorry to hear that you're having a tough week. I hope I hope you're off today. I hope most people are off today and that they're not working on New Year's Eve. Um, but yeah, it looks like a smaller crowd this time, which is okay. Um, Great. Thanks again for chiming in. Thanks for making it to the stream. Um, cool. Well, I have on the mic here James, who's still faceless right now, but I think like as a permanent guest. But in the future, I'll be having him on video as well. So, James, you wanna introduce yourself again real quick?
Yeah, good morning, Mike, and or afternoon, everyone else. So yeah, I'm James, J Robin Dev on Twitter. I interviewed Mike last time. Might do the same thing going forward, but I still have a MacBook Pro camera, which isn't very flattering over Twitch. So I promise I'm going to buy an actual one next week, so we can put my face up there, and hopefully the audio sounds better than last time. We don't get terrible echoing whenever I talk. So yeah, I'll be throwing another question at Mike today. We'll see if he gets the job, and we'll give him some feedback, and then hopefully answer some questions.
Awesome. And welcome Tech Rally. Huge get. I really appreciate you being here. Cool. Well, I think let's just get going. We're a couple minutes after the hour. I decided that my thing is I'm gonna tell an HTML joke if I need to fill the silence. But I'll start that later on in the stream. But why don't we get started with the question, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. So for those of you that weren't here last time, I asked Mike to build an analog clock from scratch. Pretty tricky question. You got a bit stumped on the maths, which is hopefully you'd never come across a question in the wild that throws a math at you on the front end. So it was a bit tricky, but he still got the job, still did a good job. And this time I'm going to lean a little bit less on the CSS. So this one's a bit more JavaScript heavy. And I will send something to you now, Mike. It's going to be a mock-up. Actually, I'll send it over chat so everyone can see it.
Oh, all right. Let's see if I'm just gonna type that in.
I also sent it over Discord.
Okay,
That kind of occurred to me
um,
afterwards.
I'm gonna need to type it in because I don't want to show my Discord.
Also fair.
All right, looking good. What did I do wrong here? Is that an 8? All right, great. Okay, all right. Why don't you explain this problem to me, James?
Yeah. So for whatever crazy reason, I want you to build me a cryptocurrency converter. We're going to be using a simple API to get the BTC price. I'll post that in somewhere as well. Sorry, you need to type that one in. We should have thought
No
this
worries.
beforehand. Yeah, we're going to be using that API to get the Bitcoin price at different for different currencies like US dollars, euros, GBP, CNY, JPY, or whatever ever else you want to add on there. We're going to have a drop down to select the currency, an input to input the amount that you want to convert from, and then we also want to have it auto refresh. We'll say every 10 seconds. We'll keep the formatting simple for now, just like 6 decimal place output. But I also want to see the price change since the last interval on the right hand side, and we'll colorize that and maybe throw in an up and down arrow. You can format that how you like, but just make it kind of visually appealing in whatever way you can.
Okay, so just to be clear on this, we have it's like 5 currencies here in the drop down. This just takes a number, like a decimal. Like I can put fractional units after this, right? Like,
you can,
sense,
yeah.
It's gonna call this endpoint and fetch Bitcoin. Sorry, the number of Bitcoins that this converts to, that this currency amount converts to.
So that endpoint, you pass it like you can see it's got like a code placeholder in there. You pass that like USD.json. and it returns you the like the I think it's $1 to, or sorry, 1 Bitcoin equals blah 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 US dollars.
Got it. Where is that? Okay, it's BPI, and wait, that's just the rate.
So that's how much
Okay,
one
got it. Got it.
Bitcoin
Okay,
is
got it. Got
equivalent
it.
to.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So I had to do some math myself.
Sorry, yeah, the math here should be a lot simpler than last time.
Okay, sounds good. And then you said that this will update every 10 seconds, or like, I mean, this whole thing down here will update every 10 seconds. This will presumably be blank at the beginning of the first time I call it, and then in the future it'll reflect the amount that's changed, and it'll have a. Will there be a negative sign if it's negative, and in addition to the down arrow, or is it just going to be the down arrow?
No, well, the ideal would be like an up or down arrow with green or red coloring,
Right.
you know, which should in itself be like indicative of whether it's gone up or down. So you should
don't
need a
need
negative sign.
Okay.
In terms of the initial value, I'll leave that up to you. You can either kind of keep it blank initially, or we can have like a placeholder value, whichever you prefer.
Okay. All right. So let me think through this. I feel like the challenging part is gonna be this. I guess it's there's not too much that's like particularly difficult. It's just kind of like putting it all together. But let me think through like whether I'm going to be using a framework for this. I think no. There's just not enough stuff that's like reacting. Sorry, that wasn't even like an intended pun. Thanks, Roy. I appreciate that. There's not enough stuff that's going to be changing in response to the user's interaction. Since like most of the changing is going to be happening down here. Ian is asking where I'm going to do the conversion when the response comes back. So my current plan for this, like the logic is user types. Oh, I'm sorry, James. I'm assuming that like when I update either field, it will fetch the Bitcoin price and update this display. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So yeah, my plan, Ian, is I'm going to make it so that on change or on currency or on the currency dropdown or after 10 seconds, I'm going to fire a request to Coinbase or CoinDesk and fetch the rate and do the conversion after that request comes back. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so basically like there's going to be 3 triggers for updating this. It's the typing in stuff here, changing the dropdown, or 10 seconds elapses. And I imagine I'm going to want to debounce this input, which for those who don't know what that means, it's going to be I'm going to want to like basically wait like maybe 200 milliseconds after this the user stops typing, because we don't want to like flood CoinDesk with a bunch of requests. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I think I'm going to deal with that later. But yeah, we basically like the ideal user experience does not flood CoinDesk with a bunch of requests as the user's like typing in. If they want to type in like 100.01, we don't want to flood CoinDesk. And I imagine that every single time I do this, so I'm going to be having like an interval of 10 seconds for refreshing this display. I'm going to want to, every time I like change one of these, I want to push that interval back. I don't want to, start typing and then like maybe like the next tick was about to happen the next second. I basically want to delay that until like anytime I type, I want to do the fetch and then wait 10 seconds before I start doing the fetch again. I see a ton of chatter in here. Yes, that's right. Ian, looks like you can just type in whatever currency and it'll fetch the rate. So why don't we do JPY, just Japanese yen, just to make sure. And yeah, it's like approximately a gajillion yen to 1 Bitcoin. Okay, great. I think that is my approach. James, any comments before I start writing some code?
No, I mean, I usually save feedback to the end, but
Okay.
just like big thumbs up for bringing up debouncing nice and early.
Okay.
If you've ever got anything that comes up where you're hitting some endpoint and there's user input, there's going to be a debounce aspect to it somewhere along the line, or they want to hear about debouncing.
Yes, sir. That is usually how these things go. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna make some very simple inputs and stuff like that. The complexity is not going to be the CSS this time. It's going to be in the JavaScript. So I will want to make sure that to get to that as soon as possible. So I'm just gonna set up a container in here, and I'm just gonna like put like 2 centered inputs in here. Actually, what is this type? Because it's like a float. I'm gonna say number. I'm never sure like what these types should be. I'm pretty sure that it should be number, because yeah, like we're gonna want to be able to do like 100.00. And I think number is the best for that. But maybe James, you can correct me if I'm wrong later. So I'm gonna make this select. I'm gonna add labels at the end of this because that's more accessible. But I'll deal with that later because I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to do this on time. So this is gonna be, yeah. Why don't we do this? Euro GBP CNY JPY, and just gonna do a bit of macro magic here. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I never. So okay, that's gonna be that. I'm just gonna wrap this in a class called inputs and basically flex it so that and then I'm gonna have the display down here. Right, display. Man, I wish I were using Tailwind. Wouldn't have to think of these names. Right, Tech Rally? All right, so this is the amount display. And this is going to be the change display. I don't think these need display in them, but whatever. Okay, let's see how this goes, and I'm going to open this in my browser real quick. See how we're doing. I just have these like boilerplate styles for box sizing. I hope no one thinks I'm cheating here. All right, this is 3004. That's not good. What's happening here? Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Okay, great. Going to center this. Tech Rally thinks that I'm bad at naming because of Tailwind, but it's actually because those names are really annoying to write. Great. So I'm gonna do max width. I don't know, 600 looks like, something like that. And I'm gonna say like margin like 20. I'm gonna do runs. Great. And inputs is gonna be display flex. Actually, I don't think I need that. I'm not gonna worry too much about the styling, James, for now. I'll deal with it later. Hopefully that's fine. All right.
Yeah, styling
So,
is more bonus points. Just focus on the
James,
JS
real
for
quick
now.
question. I don't need to like if someone types like I don't know like ABC in here, what should happen? Should I just not send the request, or should I like tell them don't do that, or like what if they type like 10A?
Yeah, we definitely shouldn't send a request. Like, we don't want to send unnecessary requests to hit the API. And if you want to display an error, like again, that's bonus points. But at the very least, we just
Okay.
want to display like blank Bitcoin.
Okay, great. Eggs data, I never style with tags. Just like even for toy projects like this, styling with classes is almost always what you want to do instead of styling with tags. I could have a main that like I want, like main is the exception because I'm only ever gonna have one of them. But like for almost everything else, I have some exceptions to this. Like I think like if I want like all my base styles for like a link to be like a blue or like a like purple or something like that, then I would maybe style this and like override them as I need to. But in general, like I almost always find that like when I try to style with tags, it bites me in the ass. Because there's usually some version of that tag that I need where I don't want it to be that style, and then I have to like undo all the styling that I put on the base tag. So it's like always pretty annoying when I do that. Okay, so can I even type letters? Okay, so on Chrome, I can't even type letters, but I'll do some validation in JavaScript. They shouldn't be able to type it. Yeah, that's correct. I already because I'm using input type number, they already can't do that. So um, great. Okay, so I'm gonna start writing the code for this. Yeah, no, Ian, no. Actually, yeah, like I mean, I guess like maybe I can try like setting a value here. Yeah, it doesn't even work. It doesn't work in Chrome though. Like it could work in some other like happier browsers. But I'm still gonna just make sure that like we don't send the request either way. By the way, how's the size of the terminal? Is it working for people? People can see, or should I make it even bigger? Great. A list is the only one that said make it bigger, but I will. All right, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here too. Okay, so I'm gonna do amount element equals document.query selector, or sorry, get element by ID amount, and I'm gonna do the same thing for currency. I'm just gonna make sure that these all work. Great. Um, Okay, so I'm going to make a click handler. Like I'm actually like starting to wonder if I should have done this in React because of the no, I don't think it would be easier. I was just thinking like, oh, there's a couple things that it needs to respond to, but like I think that plus the interaction with the set interval is going to be like really tricky anyway. So I'd rather just like deal with it in vanilla. Um, Uh, Peruvian says I should just do these in CodePen, but I wouldn't have access to all my fancy Vim magic. Peruvian. And is it bad that I don't do vanilla JS? It's not ideal if you don't know how to do vanilla at all. I think it's like you can generally get by professionally with only using like a framework, but it's really helpful to be able to do both. Especially if like you go to an interview and they're like, you can't use a framework. Um, so just my 2 cents. But yeah, I'm gonna get started. I'm really getting a little bit concerned about time now. So I'm gonna do a change handler or input handler. I no longer remember how to do this natively. So I'm just gonna like uh, console.log the value here. Yes, agreed. Yeah, if you run into an error with React, um, and like also you still write native stuff with with React, like vanilla stuff with React. So it's still always helpful. What is going on here? This is a fun thing for an experienced developer to be Googling. Yeah, no, that should be working. Um, is this even running? It is. Okay, yeah. I just had a catch. Very annoying. It is input. Yeah, like I think change and input both work, but input I think is better. I can't. I'm now blanking on why it's better. James, do you remember why it's better? James is gone.
No,
I
and I
bored
was
him to death.
sorry, I was on mute. I was actually googling before you were going to ask me, but I haven't got that yet.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely better. I remember replace change, but I can't remember what's better about it.
I know
Um,
change is obviously better than like key down, etc., because
yes,
it handles
yes,
like a wider bunch of events that can happen. But input and change, yeah, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
yeah, yeah. There's something different about them, and I think it's like maybe like the data available on the event. Um, but yeah, I don't know the answer. Okay, so I'm going to parse this amount as a number. As this comes in, and this should be the place where I can actually filter out if they put in a bad input. So yeah, this is good. I should just dock this to the bottom, and also I'm sure you can't read the console, so I'm gonna zoom in there too. Oh, that's too much. Yeah, so this is looking good. Um, then I am going to check if this is NAN and just return if that's the case. So this will prevent them from putting in whatever crap is in there. Um, and then I'll log the amount after this. So let me just make sure this is working. So this is bad. Like this is valid input according to the input number spec. Like this random crap in here, but because it's parsing as NAN, I'm returning, and I'm not going to send this garbage to CoinDesk. Okay, so actually, this is probably going to go in like a broader event handler. Sorry, like a broader function where I basically like parse the amount and the currency, and like I do all the like conversion and populate the display. But for now, I'm just gonna like do each element as I go along. So I think I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to. This is not. This is just going to be a string. For real, I'd probably be using jQuery. That's I'm so curious what people get out of jQuery in 2021. No disrespect. I think like the ergonomics of the library are a little bit easier, but it's just like a lot of extra weight. All right, cool. Great. And all right, so I'm going to put together a function to convert amount. So this is going to involve basically everything that I've done here. So I'm going to like move this in here, and then like these things are both going to call convert amount because we need to do the same thing every single change here. Whoops. All right. Oh, I got rid of my currency thing here. I'm just gonna log both amount and currency just to make sure everything's working. Yep. Yep. All right. So I'm gonna start by just like converting $1 uh, to CoinDesk, so I don't have to deal with the debouncing right now. Uh, I want to see what people are saying. How do you do testing? Probably not ideal to do testing in a code interview scenario. Depends technically. Like I think like front end testing is like almost impossible on live interviews. Um, I've had interviews where I've done like unit tests. I think unit tests are generally a lot easier to write if you're doing like backend like API testing or something like that. But yes, I think for backend testing, I'd use Jest. For UI interviewing, I almost have never been asked to write tests in that context. But I would also use Jest for UI and React testing library if I'm using React. And like I don't know what I don't know. James, you can weigh in here too. I'm just basically talking nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, don't want to distract you, but personal preference, agree, React testing library if I'm using React, and I just want to, I'm not going to go enzyme and like trying to shallow test and unit test my components. I want to test like the integration between components. Cypress if I'm doing end-to-end tests. If I'm using vanilla JS or I want to do unit tests, then yeah, I'll probably just throw in Jest and do some basic tests like that. But honestly, that discussion could be like a whole video and Twitch stream in itself.
Yes.
We can go into a lot of detail on that.
Yep. Okay, so I just made a get CoinDesk URL function here that just like plugs the currency into that URL. I'm gonna, I guess, do this in fetch, which I guess I need to make this async. So I'm gonna fetch get CoinDesk URL with the currency, and then JSON. If this is blank, hold on, I'm gonna just comment this out. If this is blank, if amount is blank, because so now I'm triggering this when currency is changed too. I'm just gonna actually make sure that like when the amount is blank that I get an NaN. I'm pretty sure if I parse float an empty string, I'll get an NaN. Great. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's good. All right, so I'm gonna log the response that I get from this when I all right, so I'm looking for the BPI. Oh, that sucks. I need to reference it by the currency. And I'm looking for rate float. So I'm looking for BPI and referenced by the currency, and then rate float. See if that works. It's interesting. I actually am realizing now I do not need to trigger this again, the call to the API again when I type in amount if currency hasn't changed. I only need to fetch that every time currency changes. So I'm going to want to refactor my code a little bit to make sure I don't make any unnecessary calls to. So this whole like debouncing isn't even relevant. Like I pretty much just need to only fetch and store the rate float on when I change the currency element. So that changes my approach quite a bit, which is yeah. So let me actually just like update that real quick. Because that'll actually make a lot of this stuff easier because I don't need to write a debounce function. I see some chatter still. Input fires whenever the field loses focus if the input changed. Okay, got it. What is NaN? Not a number. Yes. So basically, if I, yeah, it's a type of Indian bread. Yeah, so basically like if yeah, it pops up in a couple cases like this where you're trying to parse a number. So if you so parse int and parse float both take strings and like theoretically they're numbers. But if you try to parse a string or a float of something that's not a number, you get this not a number thing. But if you parse it with a real number, you get a number. Okay, so I'm going to call this fetch currency then, and then I'm going to store the rate. Yeah, like this is one thing. Like I'm not really sure where to store the state of like the current rate that we're converting from into. And like I also want to basically, I think I want to fetch this in the background, right? Actually, okay, here's a question, James. Um, how up to date does this number need to be? Like Bitcoin like could crash today 20% while I'm using this input. Should it be up to date from the last time I um, changed this input, or should it be up to date from when I started typing here?
Well, okay, let's think about this from a user perspective. What would a user most want to
They
see?
would want to see the up to date date as like as up to date as it can be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should fetch it. Okay, so maybe my approach is correct. Okay, I'm gonna go with this for now because this will give us the most up to date prices. While the user's interacting with it. So okay, this is good. I went down a rabbit hole and I came back. Um, and again, I just want to make sure that this is parsing properly. And then if I change this to euro, to yen or to I don't remember what the renminbi, Japanese yen, and Great British pounds. Okay, great. Um, and then how do we calculate the number of Bitcoin? So we want to basically divide the amount uh, by divide the amount by the rate float, and that should get us the number. Great. And then you said we wanted this rounded to 6 decimal places. And we want to store the last number of BTC. I'm just going to set that to null. And then at the end of this, I'm going to store that, and then I'm going to calculate the difference here. And then I'm going to also just collect my inputs here. So yeah, I'm just going to double up on change display because I need to style that. But this only needs to be an ID. This could probably be amount input element and currency input element. I think to like now I need to disambiguate this from the display element. Um, I'll reconsider the naming a little bit. Oh man, some some real joke some real joking happening in the chat here. I love it. All right, so um, yeah, so I have the display. I'm gonna populate the display element with uh, the number of BTC, and I'm gonna need to format that in a second because James said that's gonna be 6 decimal places. These will both be 6 decimal places. So, and if we have a last number of BTC, I'm going to populate the change display with the difference. Um, it should be the number minus the last number. And if that's negative, actually, okay. Here's another question, James. If this is in response to user input, we don't want to display this, right? We only want to display this if this is a response to like time elapsing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll need to figure out some way to deal with that. I am thinking that these are going to. Okay, I'm thinking like maybe like we'll do like clear last number, and that's going to be a Boolean. It'll default to false. And if clear last number is true, then I'm gonna null this out. And then in both of these input handlers, I'm going to set that to true. And that will null this out. So this will never run as long as we're updating the thing. But yeah, so I'm gonna want to set the interval as soon as possible so I can actually see if this is working. But let's see if the text updating is working. Just the amount. Nope. Okay. Yes. Alyssa, I can walk through the converter amount function. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to see you. Yes, so I'll just run through the prompt again real quick. I'm building this basically. Anytime these inputs are updated, I'm going to update this display with how many bitcoins is the equivalent of this currency and number, and this will also update every 10 seconds. And as long as that's happening on the interval, this will update this price change display. And Alyssa just asked if I can. Also, sorry. Looks like I have some issues here with my HTML. Let me fix this first, and I'll come back to this. Oh, what am I doing? This is not the correct syntax for this. Okay, let me just make sure this works, and then yeah. Okay, so we need to format that. Okay, so real quick. This section down here is basically what does the conversion. So I'm going to ignore this for now. All this like last number BTC stuff. That's for like showing the difference. We got the rate float, right, which is the number of US dollars or whatever currency that we're converting to 1 Bitcoin, right? If you look at that response, that's what it is. And sorry, I don't have the fancy JSON converter. The amount of like privileges that Chrome extension asks for is too many. But yeah, so this is the rate. It's a rate float, which is so it looks like from this API they have like the rate as a string, and then they have the rate float, which is the rate as a number. Yes, that's right, JSON. So this is the number of US dollars that go into a single Bitcoin, which is like much lower than it's been recently. I have to look at my my crypto portfolio, but yeah. So basically, like I am basically running through this this response shape. So this is BPI. I think like Bitcoin per something. I don't even know like what this stands for. And then it has the currency as the next like object key, and then rate float. So that's basically the trail I'm running through this JSON object to get to the number I want. And then I'm dividing the amount, which is the numerical representation of what the user typed in, by the rate float, and that's giving me the number of BTCs that I'm going to render. And again, I'm going to convert it to. I think there's 2 ways to do this. to fixed, I believe, is one of them, and then to locale string, I believe, is the other one. So let me just check which one's better for what I'm trying to do. This is more complicated. I'm pretty sure I could just get by with to fixed. That's just gonna output six decimal points. So I don't think that I need anything fancy there. Like I think to locale string will like localize this a little bit for me more because like some languages might not use the decimal place, but it's more complicated. I don't really want to deal with it right now. There's like all these things that I need to like deal with. Yeah. I guess it wouldn't be that hard, but I also have to pass in a language here, which is, oh, you can pass it undefined. I'm going to do that just for accessibility. I don't want to be US centric here. Let me make sure this works. I have no idea if this works. Let's see. I'm not that familiar with this. Great. Okay, now I am not a US centric person. Although I think this is only going to I had to do both minimum and maximum because it looked like sometimes it was truncating if it was like okay, yeah. So now it'll display the trailing zeros as well. Great. How am I doing on time? 15 minutes left. All right, so I have 15 minutes to do this difference thing, to set the interval, and to do the debounce. I have no idea if that's enough time, but we'll see. I like to think that because I've been talking through this entire problem the whole time that I would do better in a live coding situation. So, okay, so I'm going to trigger this every 1 second. Just to see if this last difference thing works. I have no idea if this is going to work. There's probably a better way to debug this. This is going to be false. So I'm just going to call convert amount. Wait, and that's not working. That's not working. Why isn't that working? So this is going to set the last number of BTC to number of BTC. I'm probably going to do some console.log debugging here. Thanks, TechRally, for the support. Just going to do this check real quick. If you see this, by the way, this object console.log syntax is like the best thing ever. I don't know if anyone uses this, but it's like amazing because you can see like basically like I get a labeled like console.log of all like the things I want if it's like simple variable names. Hey Lasha. We don't know. Like maybe people are asking this. I could see we've done enough interviews. Like basically these questions are not real questions. They're ones that like we feel like are very reasonable for someone to ask if they like yeah, just based on our experience with the whole interview process. I'm going to I'm actually going to change this to I'm just going to like I'm trying to basically like something's going wrong with this like clearing and like the null stuff like this. So let me think through what's going on. It's basically like, yeah, I'm setting the last number of BTC. By the way, you might hear my kid in the background. But I think what's happening is the rate isn't changing. Oh, it is. But it doesn't change that often. How often does this change? Maybe it's once every 10 seconds. So maybe this like is just not this is never gonna trigger. So I'm gonna do once every 10 seconds. This is maybe an overlooked part of how good of a question this is. Okay, so no change yet. So let's wait another 10 seconds. I'm gonna log the fractional rate. I'm gonna log the rate as well.
So I will jump in quickly and say I wrote this question very late last night, so I may have overlooked some aspects of it. If so, apologies.
Yeah. We might just be doing the debounce part. But this looks like it's changing enough. Like I'm wondering if like, okay, so like when the rate float updates, like I really think that the number of BTC should update too. Yeah, go get Elon to tweet. Go have him question the validity of Web3. Okay, yeah, actually, so this rate float is updating. Okay, so yeah, this should have shown a difference between the two. Okay, so I am going to do the same like to locale string, and I probably want to genericize the step function. I'm gonna see if this works. Every time, this is a very long feedback loop. I need to log the difference too because like it just might be like a very tiny difference, and it's not even showing up at all in the in the. You guys hear my kid? Okay, so the difference in BTC is 0 because I think it's no that one's actually 0. So let's see. Okay, so next time the rate floats, let's see if difference in BTC gets updated. This is some scintillating console.logging action. If this like turns out to be like kind of a bust, yeah, this is a very small difference in BTC. I will actually put in like a really large number here, and then I'm pretty sure this will trigger some kind of difference. But I think James maybe we won't do that one. I think maybe we won't do that part of the question, even though I think that's like where a lot of the complexity lied. I think I'll maybe just do the debounce and like, and I guess the updating.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, because most of the time the difference is 0, even with 10-second intervals. Yeah, that's a good idea, Tech Rally. Because I only have 8 minutes left. Yeah, why does it take so long to update sometimes? Yeah, even that. So it does show up. Maybe I'll like put in some large amount. I'll do this. I'll do this part of the problem, but I'll put in some really large amounts and like with a 30-second timer. And then but I'll try and get the rest working first, and then and I'll come back to this later. Sound good?
Sounds great.
So we do want to get the debounce working, which I'm just gonna put in the global scope right now. Like obviously I need to like namespace, or I'm gonna need to like put this in like a like I didn't do this for the clock, but I'll try to do it for this one before I run out of time. Tech Rally said they got an extra 10 minutes, so I'm gonna take advantage of that. So I'm gonna do this like debounce timer ID equals null. And so what I'm going to do is inside of here, I'm going to do a set timeout, and then I'm going to like create a constant bounce. Roll equals 200 milliseconds. I found is usually a good interval. So the whole wisdom behind this is like basically when like if this keystroke happens while there's a debounce timer ID, so basically like set timeout returns a timer ID, and you can use that to clear the timeout. And so if we hit a keystroke while there is an active debounce timer ID, we're going to want to clear that interval, or sorry, we're going to want to clear that timeout and then set a new timeout. And then that way, this will only fire 200 milliseconds after I stop typing. That's basically the desired effect. So if debounce timer ID, clear timeout, debounce timer ID, and then debounce timer ID equals set timeout function. Pretty sure that will do it. So I'm actually going to make the debounce timer ID like 2 seconds just to make sure that this is working. Yeah. So let's change that back to 200 milliseconds. Looks like we got a good working debounce. And it's no longer refreshing. So that is pretty much a working problem up to the point where like I generalize this to be able to like add several of these on the page. And before I do this like set interval. So James, I'm gonna pause here and ask if like which one you'd prefer I do with the limited amount of time I have.
Okay, what were the just
yeah, so
the two options again?
The two flaws in this right now are I am not doing the interval thing that we discussed. I think that there's still some potential to do that if I make the amounts in my inputs large enough. Sorry, if I make like the amount in the amount input large enough. The other option is I could do like right now there's only one of these that I could ever have. I'm using IDs. There's like a lot of globally scoped variables in here. That's something I would definitely improve if I were like submitting this as a PR. I'm curious like which one you'd prefer that I do first.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is there any preference in the chat for either of those two options? Just if obviously these interviews are more for the people that are like looking to prepare for interviews. So if there's any preference for one over the other, I'm happy to go for that.
The interval is harder. I agree.
You're not wrong.
I agree. Okay. Any other preferences? I'm happy to do the interval if no one else votes. I would say that the generalizing is more useful because like I think it is more like broadly applicable. But I do agree that it's harder to do the interval, and I'm happy to give that an attempt. All right, cool. Anyone else have preference? I'm open to anything. Thanks, Tech.
All right, let's do the generalization. For the interval, like I said, I'll kind of put this question up on frontend eval, and I'll try and find a better approach where we can actually integrate the interval where it makes a bit more sense. So I'll find a different API, or maybe just create one that'll make this question more useful for that.
Define evil. I'm building a Bitcoin currency calculator. It's going to take an amount and a currency, and it'll convert it to Bitcoin. Cool. All right, I'm going to generalize this. Great. So I guess like the most generalizable way I could do this is like basically like take insert like an element that looks like data BTC calculator, and just like insert that onto the page, and then like the JavaScript populates the rest. Like similar to the way that React does. Like with the React component, like it would look like this, something like this, right? And that would be kind of like the better way to do it. That way, like the issue with like having all my HTML elements out like this is like if I want to have multiple of these, I need to copy this entire unit of code to like some other place in the thing. because like these all depend, like the functionality all depends on like my markup being configured a certain way. And if I were to insert all this markup using JavaScript, then I no longer have that issue. I can just like insert this, and it'll just populate with all the stuff inside it, and that would be great. I think that is actually a bit more of an ambitious approach, and that is probably what I'm going to try to do. James, what do you think? Do you think I have time to do that?
What finish time were you aiming for? I know Tech Rally kindly gave you another 10 minutes.
I'm gonna aim for 10 minutes. I think
Okay.
I think I can do it. It's pretty ambitious, but I'm gonna try and do it within 10 minutes.
I would love to see you do this in
Okay.
10 minutes, and I'll be starting a timer to drag it.
Okay. All right. So basically, yeah. So my approach is going to be like, if I see something with data BTC calculator in it, I'm going to peek inside. Like, and I actually think that this would be easier with jQuery, but I'm not going to use jQuery. I'm a masochist. So I'm going to grab all, like, basically, I'm going to grab all the elements. Like, so I'm actually going to try doing this with two data BTC calculators. I want them to operate independently. Uh, thanks, Define Evil. That's right. Define Evil. Do I know you, by the way? Who are you? But I'm gonna start coding while I wait for that response. Not new here. Cool. Nice to meet you. All right. So I'm going to insert this as a comment. And I'm going to reference it as I try and do what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to comment all this out real quick. And I'm going to basically start over. But I'm going to reuse a lot of this code. Okay, so I'm going to get all the BTC calculators as document query selector all data BTC calculator. I'm like nervous now. This is actually going to be really hard. And I'm going to do for const of calculator of BTC calculators. I'm going to make sure I can do this. I might need to convert that to an array because it's a node list right now. But yeah, I'm getting two divs, which is good. Okay, so within each one, I'm going to create an amount element. I'm going to create a select element. I'm going to create that inputs thing. I'm going to create a price display and the amount display below it. So going to do some DOM foo here. Document create element inputs equals document.create element. It's going to be div inputs class name equals inputs. I'm going to insert that inside my calculator. That's not right. Inside of inputs, I'm going to have a number, an input type number. So yeah, I'm going to actually rename all this stuff in here to amount, from amount element to amount input. Same thing with currency, just like I always wanted to do. So I'm going to call this amount input equals document create element input amount input dot type equals number. And I don't need an ID anymore because I already have the reference to it. And then I'm going to have a currency element or currency input. I guess like currency is a select, but I'm just going to keep calling it currency input. Document.create element select currency. And then inside, I'm going to include all my currencies, and I'm going to do that as an array. Currencies equals, take this. turn that into an array. And I'm going to generate a list of selects, and I'm going to insert them into the currency input. These are pretty dialed in, so if there's any questions coming up, can you let me know?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
You're doing well. You've got a whole 5 minutes and 20 seconds left.
That's crazy because I feel like I've just started. Option.value equals currency. Option.text content equals currency. So I'm basically just recreating this entire DOM using JavaScript. So, and then I'm going to insert that into my currency input. And then I will insert that into inputs. Actually, I didn't insert them out and put it either. Okay, let's see if that worked. Great. So the DOM is all there, and I have references to everything. And I just do not have a display yet. So I'm going to create that display. Amount display. That's just it. I don't need anything else in there. I don't need any IDs or classes. It's just console.log anymore. Then I don't need any of the selectors. Then I can just like insert everything from here into here. Format that. Get CoinDesk. I don't need all these functions inside here. Like this get CoinDesk URL. It doesn't need to be defined for every single calculator. Then I don't have these inputs running or these intervals running. Should be able to display two separate inputs. Okay, well that is pretty much it. Like for generalizing.
Honestly, I am super impressed. I didn't have a lot of faith. I mean, I have a lot of faith in you, but I am very impressed that you managed to get that done in 7 minutes. Generalizing that's fantastic.
Yeah, this is the benefit of knowing the DOM like API really well. Is just not like you could get this done if you had to look up every single like document.create on like a pen child and like assigning all the things to them. But it's really helpful to be able to kind of like know it by heart.
Do you want to throw in another couple of elements just to show how easy it is to kind of duplicate it?
Yep, exactly. Why don't we have 10 extra BTC calculators? Yeah.
You want to select a different currency?
Sure. Yeah, let's do JPY because this is a lot of JPY and it converts to very few Bitcoin. Great. We are done. I want to hear some feedback.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little less feedback than last time. I think overall, yeah, you did a fantastic job. Okay, wait. Actually, I'm going to throw a question out of there related to a potential edge case. Let's see if it works. Can you enter negative numbers?
Ooh. Yes. I should have asked if this is like. I think this is fine.
Yeah, I was honestly trying to think of better edge cases, and that was the only one I came up with. Since you already handled not a number.
Yeah, this is not allowed on Google's, so it's probably a good idea to just like copy their UX. But we can definitely just shove that in there. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Easy fix.
Telling the interview it's fine.
I would still hire him after that after that comeback. Okay, so in that interview, the good. Yeah, I mean, if you switch back to the code,
yeah.
Let's take a look at the code quality.
Oh yeah, this could probably be split out into like more. Actually, this does not need to be in here. This doesn't need to be in the loop. Sorry, let me just make one quick change. I don't think this needs to be in the loop. The fewer things in the loop, the better, because like I think it's like less confusing. And I could probably just pass in like the inputs that I need, like the amount, the rate, and things like that. But yeah, I'll leave it as is because I need to do a little bit of work to make that happen. But yeah, like the fewer things inside this like gigantic loop, the less confusing the code is. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of going to be a bit of my feedback as well. Like the overall code quality is good. You know, I wouldn't really ding anyone for what's here. Like you're using good variable names, using good use of the right selectors, good use of like, you know, the right semantic elements where appropriate, good use of async await. The only thing I would maybe say is breaking it down into subfunctions, as you said, you know, kind of breaking it down into a bit more manageable pieces, but that's honestly more of a nitpick regards to code quality. So code quality for me on this gets like a big thumbs up.
Yeah, I can tell you too, like a little bit of what I do. Like I'd probably like break this chunk out. Like basically, like I chunked it so that it would all be like easily broken out. Because you know I could basically like there's too much going on here. I agree. Like this is like basically constructing the DOM, and then this is like assigning the event listeners. And then down here is the actual conversion function, which again does not need to be in the loop. So like could definitely break out like the event listeners and like the DOM construction and all that into different functions. And then I'll actually probably do that before pushing it up to the code pen so that people can see what I would end up doing. But that's kind of the approach I'd take if I had more time.
Cool. Yeah. And then other good aspects. Thinking about edge cases early and often, and once again asking like really good questions. I know this question was a bit tricky since you know, one of the key parts that changed in the interval like didn't work as well for the API we were using. I will try and fix that before we post this question out. We'll find like a better API for that. But yeah, calling out the debouncing, like any question like either I ever had myself or have asked other people, if there's been an input where you're hitting an API. Like I'm really listening out for like, oh, I should debounce this. You know, that's generally just a keyword the interviewer is looking for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say there's also one other thing that I would do if I had more time. There are like rare occasions when like if I'm typing and like I type in a couple things like in rapid succession, that my old request will take like one, like if I fire off 2 requests as like a result of typing, sometimes the first request will come back after the second request. And the way that people usually mitigate this is by assigning a request ID to each one. And so in this like promise, basically like saying if like if it's an earlier request, don't run any of this information. So this is like a really, really rare edge case, but it does result in really confusing user behavior.
Cool. So moving on to the to improve section, and again, I just want to stress like that I'm grasping at straws here because overall this is a really good approach. I think you started to fall down a bit of a refactoring rabbit hole. Which was largely due to the structure of the question itself. But just wanted to call out, like, if this happens in an actual interview and you start kind of like questioning your approach, like you have an approach that is working, and you start to like completely rethink your approach, like kind of consider like, is it worth just getting to a working solution with my current approach first, or will this like literally not work? And I do need to scrap this and start again with a different approach. So there's a trade-off to be made there because you don't want to fall down a rabbit hole in the middle of an interview where like every single minute counts. In this case, like it was the right choice to make. but it's just something to be aware of, like if you're ever in an interview and like that comes up.
Yeah, it is a tough calculus because like the reason I was thinking about it was because like my approach might have been like you have to kind of think of whether or not it's going to be harder to fix it later. Like yeah, you don't want to like pile onto a bad approach with like just like if you catch it early uh and you have an opportunity to fix it like relatively easily, it might make sense to do because you don't want to like just continue piling on a bad approach, especially if like that approach makes it harder to refactor later. That's kind of the only reason that I was considering going back and like fixing it is like if I continue with this approach, like this changes like the complete structure of my code. If it's like, oh, maybe like, oh, I need to fix this like styling later, always like worry about that kind of stuff until the end. But like I think like this one was like kind of an existential threat to the like validity of my solution. And I ended up being like right about it in the first place anyway. So, but I was only incidentally right. I didn't think about it carefully. So I would say
Yeah.
like uh, James' feedback is really good, but also like I should have thought about that at the beginning and thought through that the implications of caching the currency conversion before digging into the problem.
Yeah, agreed. And the final piece of feedback I wanted to give was actually something you mentioned early on, but didn't return to, which was accessibility. I think if you go to your HTML in here, if you can switch to that quickly, and we can see that we have unlabeled fields, which is you come across that quite a lot in form fields, but for accessibility and for WCAG, like accessibility guidelines, like they are a law that you need to follow. And granted, a lot of interviewers might not pick up on this, and it might not be a big thing, but it is the law, and like you will get bonus points if you call it out and if you follow it. So in this particular instance, what Mike could have done is he could have either added explicit labels that were visually hidden, or added an ARIA label to the inputs, so that when somebody like a blind user is going through it with a screen reader, it would still read out like the currency input or currency drop down selector. So that's also something to be aware of, I think.
It's better for them to be visible though. Like I would say like if you come across
Agreed.
this and in an interview question and you say you should add labels here and you add them, I think that'll reflect really well on you to basically correct the spec. And it's worth adding them. It's worth adding them in an accessible way. Like you want to have a correct for attribute on the label, correct ID element, or sorry, attribute on the input element. So yeah, definitely would call that out. In addition to that, like accessibility wise, this should probably have like some kind of announce role, because like if you're blind and you're typing this in and the request comes back, you wouldn't be like, I think browsers will do their best to try to announce that this is like a new element on the screen, but you're probably gonna want to put a role on this. I'm actually not sure. I would need to do like a little bit of Googling to figure out like what exactly the role is.
Yeah, could call out that on the outs. I that's something that I might add as a nice, interesting extension to this challenge, just all related to accessibility. But that was really all my feedback on this. You got it done in under an hour plus 10 minutes of chatting, which is I think more than acceptable, and also managed to generalize it as well. So again, if I was an interviewer, Mike's currently 2 for 2 on passing the interview.
Exata is asking, thanks James for that detailed feedback. Exata is asking how important is accessibility. Is very important. It's like I would say like from a business perspective, it's generally not that important. It's like maybe like a small fraction of your users are going to be like sight impaired or motion impaired. From a morality standpoint, it's very important. Like it's like generally the right thing to do. I think not Steve Jobs, but Tim Cook once said to like Apple shareholders, like, I don't really care about the business impact. It's the right thing to do to make their products accessible. If that's not enough from a morality standpoint, it's also, like James said, a law. Like, you can get sued in the US if your website is not accessible. So it only takes one user to sue you and like potentially like bring your company under. So definitely very, very important to do and to know. It's particularly important for interviews. Actually, if it's not important for interviews, it's probably not a very good front end culture. Like, I think that's what I'd say about it. Define Evil says a big tech company is baked into common front end APIs, so you probably need to understand. Yes, agreed. Yeah, it's pretty common for front end for big tech companies to like have you take a class on it and stuff like that. But you should know that it's important before you get there. Cool. Anyone have any other questions before we wrap things up? Thanks everyone again for coming out and for some of the new people in the audience today. Cool. All right. James, thanks so much for the question. Yes, we are. Lasha, I'm going to be posting this as a code pen, and I also have a repo, GitHub, where I'm going to be posting all my Vanilla.js solutions to all these, and it'll be like a separate branch. So I'll link out to both in a tweet in a little bit. Define Evil says, with most coins being so low worth, could maybe hit precision issues. Agreed. I'm not sure how I would deal with that. Yes. So I do not know how to pronounce your username. These videos will be saved to my Twitch now that I'm not, like, last week they weren't because I exposed some private information at the beginning of the stream, so I had to edit it out. They are both going to be posted to Twitch for whatever the 2 weeks is. And then I'm also going to be downloading them and uploading them to my YouTube channel, which is, I think it's linked in my Twitch channel, but if it's not, I'm going to link it after this. Cool. Define Evil. I'm curious. Like, I'm actually not 100%. I've never dealt with like such precision issues. Do you have any thoughts on how you would deal with that if we were like trying to convert sheep? It's always awkward waiting for a response from the audience. I have no idea. Yes, yeah. Like, I think like that is why they send the rate back as a string, because if the language you're using has a precision issue, you could always rely on the string to do the conversion into whatever like number format that supports that level of precision. I'm not sure how I would do it in JavaScript, to be honest. Yeah. Cool. Why would you want to? Would you want us to ask questions? Yes, I would love for people to bring their questions and to like ask questions both about the interview problem and like if you have any like interview questions in general. Yeah, Define Evil. I'm sure there are, like, not dealing with the correct number format. But Alyssa, yes, like bring your questions if you have any questions about interviewing in general, like anything that you saw here or anything that I'm doing. Feel free to ask. I do try to balance out like my explanations and things like that. And I think the math is a little less complicated in this case, so hopefully it all made sense.
Also, I'll just say that I think it's fine asking questions like as we go. We kind of try and bake in some extra time for interruptions, not interruptions, but questions throughout to explain like what Mike's doing or some particular concept. So asking questions throughout is definitely fine too.
Cool. Define Evil's asking, do I stream Q&A stuff or always mock interviews? This is my second stream, so I'm kind of open to whatever. If people like want to do some kind of like interview office hours, I'm happy to do that. And I think like I'm volunteering James to do that. James and I both, I think we have like a combined like 150 interviews under our belt, like both conducting and as a candidate. So we're pretty familiar with this stuff. So I'm happy to kind of explore the formats and like maybe if like other people are brave enough, I'm happy to mock interview them as well. So that could be something that we open it up to in the future as well. But yeah, it'll be like this for a couple weeks, and then I'll probably start branching out to some other formats if people are interested. So feel free to leave some feedback. This will be a great time to introduce a feedback form that Alyssa suggested that I create, but I did not create it. So come back next week, and I'll have a feedback form for you. But yeah, if there's no other questions, thank you all so much. Thank you, James. Follow James at JRobinDev on Twitter. And I am at generic Mike Chen on Twitter as well. Xzeta, I'm planning to stream every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific, so it'll be at this time. And finding non-beginner resources for my level that aren't biased by big company culture is hard. I am also biased by big company culture. So just FYI, like I've been at big companies for most of my life. I've done startups. I've done the startup scene too, but like most of my career was at big companies. But really appreciate you coming out, and I'm happy to share this knowledge as best I can, and so is James. Yeah, agreed. Agreed with what you're saying. Cool. I'm gonna wrap things up. Thank you again, and happy New Year, everyone. James, do you have anything else?
No. Again, great job, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for the fantastic questions. We'll be back again same time next week. I will put a bit more time into the question, I swear, next time. If anyone has any ideas for questions, please reach out to me and Mike on Twitter. This question in a better format will be on frontendeval.com later today. But yeah, apart from that, have a great new year, and we'll see you all again next week.
It was a great question, James, especially for
Thanks,
like the 10-minute time window it took to come up with it. Like I basically told James yesterday, oh, the stream's tomorrow. So I really appreciate him coming up with it on short notice. And thanks again to everyone, and happy New Year. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.